West Enders.
West End, the best end, baby. 4101 for the home run. Hitting you with a little health information today. We're talking crap. Not swearing, Mum, because I know you watch these. We're literally talking about number twos, feces, poopies, whatever you want to call them. If you're like me, you're probably a human being, meaning that you occasionally go to the toilet. What does your poopies or poop or plops or number twos say about you? Are you looking at the bowl after you do that? You most likely are. No one admits it. But someone who knows a lot about it is our resident health expert, Mark Veridimos. Thanks for coming into West Enders today.
Thanks, Jules. Pleasure to be here.
Mark, you're a holistic health and exercise coach.
Yeah.
You know a lot about the body.
Yeah.
You know a lot about what you should be putting in it, what should be coming out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell a lot about people's insides by what comes out of them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like ancient physicians have been doing it for many, many years. They've been looking at people's stool samples. Ancient physicians even used to drink people's urine to sort of get a feel for what that was doing as well.
Full on. We're not doing that today. There's certain websites you can see that. West Enders is not one of them.
So look, it's really indicative of what's going on down there in the digestive system.
Yeah, okay.
Sort of having a look at your defecation or your urine can be a really good indication of what's going on.
You know, there's actually a woman in Tanzania. They call her the poo whisperer. She actually looks at people's feces and reads their future.
Oh, right. Okay.
I didn't
know that.
I made that up. So, but there's probably people out there like that. You know what I mean? There's all sorts. And that's fine. If you're one of those people, good on you. So I want to dive straight in. There's so many different poo puns. Like I want to say like, you know, you really know your shit. We're talking crap. I want to dive right into it. So we've got a chart up here of poos. What are we going to refer to them as? Poos? Poops? Feces?
Yeah, we can call them poos. Look, they call it feces, defecation, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Happy to call it poos.
Okay, sweet.
So you know, the human body's got really three main detoxification pathways.
Mm-hmm.
So 70% is through your breath. 20% is through your skin, and this is approximation.
Mm-hmm.
20% is through your skin, and about 10% is through defecation or urine.
Right, okay.
So if you can kind of think with the breath, and people are a little bit shocked at that, you breathe, the average human breathes about 20,000 plus breaths per day, right? And so if someone's like had a big night on alcohol, you can really smell that coming through.
100%.
And similar with the skin, if someone's had a big night on alcohol, you can really smell that coming through.
Yeah.
And then around about 10% is through the defecation. So, you know, people with bad breath or people with skin issues, it can be a digestive system issue as well. But today we'll focus on in the deep end, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just going back to what you said about skin, what percentage was it that actually detoxifies through your skin?
Approximately 20%.
That's a huge amount, but that makes sense. Like I just think back to if you had a massive night on the booze, you could literally like lick your skin and get drunk again. Like you taste tequila like coming out of your pores. So let's dive into it. We've got this chart of poos. Where's this from? How did it come to be?
So I've actually taken this from a book called How to Eat, Move and Be Healthy by Paul Chek. Fantastic book on holistic health if anyone's ever interested. I think it was printed around about 14 years ago. So some of the concepts back then were quite foreign. They've probably become more prominent this day and age with all the information out there. He did design this chart a few years before that. So we're going to go through that. I have cross-reference, and I like to cross-reference everything that I do and teach clients. So I have cross-referenced this with a chart called the Bristol Stool Chart, which has come out of the...
It sounds like an indie band, by the way. We're from the Bristol Stool Chart. Got an introverted bass player, we do. Sorry, go on.
Which comes from a hospital in Bristol in England. So that chart is pretty good. I just find this chart probably a little bit more extensive in terms of what's going on.
Okay, all right. Let's dive right into it. Starting off with were we going to go from right to left?
Yeah, sure. We'll go from right to left. So on the right side, you've got a guy that looks like a policeman, and he's called the poopy policeman. Okay, so that's what actually a really good poo should look like. So you know, light brown, cylinder in shape, easy to pass, not smelling that much. Should almost have like a little bit of an earthy smell to it. Yeah, so that's why we call him the cop, right? So
he's like the dominant, the authority. Like he's the model citizen.
He's the model citizen. Yeah, that's right.
He's the model poo. Yeah, okay. I thought you were gonna say like if your poo comes out in a police uniform, like you're doing really well for yourself. I understand these are caricatures. Okay, so that's like when you do one of them, you can look at that with a certain amount of pride and be like, you know what, I'm living the good life. I'm obeying nature's law.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the ideal poo. I have had a client show me a photo of their poo before that did look like that. And
Remember that. I do remember that. Yeah. Which is ironic because we were actually at a Christmas dinner then. We were just talking generally.
yeah, we just had the egg salad and
I just got my phone out. I went, Mark. Yeah.
So that's what it ideally should look like. And a healthy digestive system, if you're eating patterns right, you're eating enough for your body, you should pass around about 12 inches per day.
12 inches a day?
Yeah, about 12 inches
So that's like a foot long, 30 centimeters.
30 centimeters, yeah, 30 centimeters.
About 300 millimeters.
Yeah.
About 300,000 micrometers.
Yeah, potentially. I don't know what micrometers are.
So if you had like a millionth of a kilometer and times that by 300, that's how much still you're supposed to pass every day.
I'd have to think about it, but yeah. Well,
about a subway length.
About a subway length.
Okay.
Yeah, about a subway length. So
Wow.
we've got so about that much, and you can do it in one sitting, but ideally you do it probably after a couple of main meals, or once in the morning and after like lunch and after like dinner, for example. So,
Okay.
So that's the poopy policeman guy. So he's the model citizen.
So moving on to the character on the left of the poo policeman. Who is that guy? What does he represent?
That little character who's got a little cape on him there is carrying a little bit of stuff that's normally representative of undigested food particles in the system. And that could be as a result of, say, like some food intolerances, leaky gut syndrome, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Potentially not even just chewing your food properly. So there's a range of things going on there, but generally represents undigested food particles.
Right. And any character generally wearing that kind of cape is either a superhero or just dodgy as heck and he's hiding something. Next one on the left. Who's that?
That Slippy character is essentially like diarrhea.
It's a Slippy character indeed.
He's a slippery character. So whether you're sort of going through a period of constipation or diarrhea or whatever it might be, this guy can really use a lot of your body's resources to get toxins out of there if you've had something pretty severe.
Okay.
So that's generally what diarrhea is about. So it will grab anything it needs to just to flush the toxins out of there.
Right, okay. Okay, makes sense. This guy on the left with the cat backwards and by the looks of it, a handgun. That's an incredibly rebellious poo.
Look, he's a pretty cool character. He's that shows a little bit of dehydration in the system. Maybe a little bit of inhibition for peristalsis. So that's just the wave-like contractions in your gut to help you push food through your system.
Okay.
So it's around the dehydration and potentially some dysfunction in peristalsis.
Okay. These are some big words, which I imagine we'll kind of unpack later. I'm going to make an assumption and say the next character on the lineup is like a bodybuilder poo, because that poo has arms.
Well done. That's awesome. Well done, Jules.
Is that like, thank you, is that like too much protein, too much meat?
Yeah, it's actually, it can be a bit of dehydration, but it's a lot of kind of like protein shakes or like protein bars or even a little bit of processed foods there as well.
Yeah, okay.
So it is a bit of dehydration along with something like, too much protein shakes, for example.
Yeah, okay, right. Or if your poo has arms, check that you actually haven't had a miscarriage, because that is going to be really, really serious. Coming up on the left.
Yeah, that guy, that guy who's looking a little bit different to everyone else in color. If you're coming up with that, then it just shows that you're not really digesting your fat that well in your body. So there's undigested fat. Potentially, you're not producing enough bile to digest your fat properly. So that's it. That's something that you need to look at essentially.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And just before we get to the last one, should you be looking at your stool like every time you go?
Yeah, look, I think it's a natural thing. I think a lot of people actually do it without even sort of saying it. I think a lot of people.
No one really says it. Like, no one just gathers around like conversations at bars. I was looking at my poo the other day.
Yeah. So I think it is a good thing to do, just to have a little health check and even just a little bit of a smell to see what's going on there.
Yeah. Okay.
And actually, it's a good segue into the last one, because this one's this last one's the real stinky guy. So this is the guy if your body's quite toxic. If you've been exposed to like a toxic environment, if you're having lots of processed foods, toxic foods, medical drugs or drugs in general, this is the guy that stinks a lot. It can like sink down into the bowl. You can't really flush it. Like it's that kind of thing. The one that will smell quite a lot.
Just nasty all round.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that, like, we've gone through each one individually, but there can also be like a combination, for example. So, not anyone's got ever sort of just one thing.
Yeah.
The human body is pretty complicated. So it could be a combination of things that are going on in your body all the time.
Okay, right. So just quickly, on the topic of defecating, pooing, crapping, plopping, people experience sometimes difficulty doing that, constipation. What's that about? What does it mean?
There's just some inhibition to sort of clear your bowels, essentially. And that could be a few things. It could be, food quality. It could be, again, I've seen it a lot with people that have food they're intolerant to. Can just really block them up.
Yeah, right.
It can be a hydration thing as well.
Okay.
So yeah, it's actually really prevalent. It's I've even seen statistics that said 90% of people actually having some kind of constipation.
Right. I was actually on a constipation forum and I couldn't log out. Log out. But yeah. There was actually a movie about constipation, but it never came out. All right, done. Enough. What about diarrhea?
Diarrhea is around your body is absorbed a few toxins there, and it's just really trying to get it out as quickly as it possible. So it will take hydration from other areas potentially, and then just flush the toxins out as quickly as possible. So if you've got consistent diarrhea, that's actually a fair issue, and you should probably go see someone about that.
Yeah.
It may happen for a day or two if you have something really bad, but if it's consistent, then it's worth seeing a professional.
Yeah, right. It's actually hereditary, I understand, because it runs in your genes. Enough. So now that we've covered all the different kinds of poos, is there things we can do to improve the quality of what we're doing in the bathroom?
Yeah, look, sure. So again, just from my experience in dealing with clients, I'll probably give the top three. There's loads of different things you can do. It kind of depends where you're deficient in your health.
Yep.
But the first one is the obvious one, which is around nutrition quality. Okay, so just the quality of food you're putting into your body. I have read a saying that said, if it wasn't around 10,000 years ago, then you don't really need to have it, or you should avoid it. Now, we live in a modern day society, so you don't want to walk around living like a monk and being so pedantic on what you eat all the time, because that in itself can be a little bit of a sickness. But that's essentially like a general rule of thumb. So just sticking to the basics is the best thing for your gut, really.
Okay, cool.
So that would be the first thing. The second thing I'd probably say is hydration.
Mm-hmm.
So your digestive system needs hydration for the whole process. From saliva all the way down to your colon. It needs the hydration to adequately digest all the food particles in there.
So is there like a general rule of hydration? So something defining how much water we should be consuming, like per kilogram of body weight?
Yeah, no, good question. So there's actually a book called The Body's Many Cries for Water. Okay. And that shows in that book that as a general rule of thumb, you'd want to have around about 0.033 times your body weight. So for example, if someone's 100 kilograms, times that by 0.033, that's like 3.3 liters per day for someone of that weight. Okay. Now that can vary quite a bit. I've seen with clients in terms of season and in terms of level of activity as well, but that's kind of like the general rule of thumb.
That's pretty manageable. Like that's not chugging gallons or anything. You can,
Yeah.
Very, very doable. What was the second, the third one?
The third one, I would actually say is stress. And in some ways, that could even be the first one. It plays a significant role in the digestive system. So if you can kind of think from like an ancestral point of view, where we're kind of fluctuating between fight or flight and rest and digest. So our autonomic nervous system is fluctuating between these two things, which is called sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. If we're eating at a time in stress and we're in fight or flight dominance, it actually takes away a lot of the blood from the digestive system and puts it to the periphery, so into like the skin and the musculoskeletal system. Okay. And from an ancestral point of view, it's because you're in fight or flight, you're not going to concentrate on eating food, you're just going to get the hell out of there, right? Yeah. The stress component can be massive. It's very much an unknown, and I think probably even a little bit ignored in the industry as well. Mm-hmm. It can happen at a conscious level, so day-to-day stress. It can even be at a subconscious level, so people carrying on to their past emotions or adverse emotions can still affect your autonomic nervous system. I've seen in clients.
It's definitely not just a reflection of your physicality. It's also your mentality as well.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the stress component is massive. I think this day and age, there is so much awareness around food, and I think it's fantastic. Yeah. But I really do think the next thing to do is address stress. And I think that's even becoming more prevalent with, so much going on. So there's even little tips with stress, like trying to eat in a calming environment, not with loud music, not in a stressful environment. That kind of thing can just help the digestive system a little bit more. Yeah,
okay. Talking all things toiletry, these poo stools, have you heard of these? Those stools?
I have heard of poo stools. Yeah, I have heard of poo stools. I essentially use one as well.
Yeah, okay. they prop your feet up, and,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you're more. How does it work, and what's the benefit?
Yeah, okay. So the toilet was actually popularized by a guy called Thomas Crapper in the late 1800s.
That makes a lot of sense. Is
Yeah,
that
it
how
makes a lot of
the
sense.
word crap came to be?
I assume so. I don't
Yeah.
actually know, but it's a pretty strong assumption that that's what happened. Right?
Yeah.
So popularized by a guy in the late 1800s, and it's become pretty prevalent in Western society since. And so what actually happens is, your legs are at about a 90-degree angle from your abdomen, and actually cuts off or really blocks up part of your colon. And so you're just not going to get the pass through that you can. So if you actually put your foot up onto a stool, you bring your legs up, the colon's just released a little bit more, and you can get a lot better flow with your bowel movements. So it's you can see it a lot more in Eastern culture, for example. And if you can kind of think again from an ancestral point of view, we were doing that a lot when we
were squatting.
Squatting a lot when
pooping,
we're working. I've even seen depictions of people squatting around and just chatting around.
Yeah.
And so that was like a fairly common movement that we would always do.
Alrighty, colonics. Heard this term being used. Got a friend who raves about it. You know who you are. What is it? How does it benefit you? I have absolutely no idea what it is.
Yeah, sure. So it's a concept that started, I've read some material that said, 1500 BC in Egypt, some material that said in Greece. But it's a concept that started where you actually put water up your bowel, through your colon, up your bowel, to evacuate some of the stuff that's in there.
To kind of flush it out.
Sort of flush it out, yeah. So it can be pretty effective for flushing out people that have come from a background where they've had a lot of toxic food or been exposed to a toxic environment, or they've got a history of fungi and parasites. It can be pretty effective in flushing that out. So it'll go up the colon, so up to the ascending colon, and then if you have a few treatments, you'll get to the transverse colon. If you have a few more treatments, then it'll go down to the descending colon and just really clean it out. Now, if you decide to do one of those, and I think it is a case-by-case basis, you'd want to have some probiotics or probiotic food or fermented foods pretty soon after, and really just load the gut up again with good bacteria. So it can actually rip out a lot of the good bacteria out of the colon. So,
Okay, so what's a fermented food?
Fermented food would be like, and it's becoming really popular the last sort of 2 or 3 years. I've seen them everywhere now. So, like sauerkraut, fermented cashew cheese. I've seen products like coconut kefir. Actually, the most popular one's probably kombucha.
Okay.
So foods that have a lot of good bacteria in there that can just recolonize the gut with good bacteria.
Yeah, okay, right.
So if you decide to do that, that would be recommended. Or you go with a course of probiotics if you feel as though you're not going to implement the food thing.
Right. You really know your shit. Mike Rudamos, thank you so much for imparting knowledge onto us. I hope you guys at home have had lots of takeaways from that. I'll definitely be checking more so to see what my stools mean, and I'm actually going to look into getting one of those poo stools. I know a few people who have actually got one, and they rave about it. It sounds like a plug. We're not selling anything at all. Thank you so much for coming into West Enders. Please come back again.
No worries, Jules. See you soon.
West Enders.